Hi there, welcome to another edition of Yoga with Anne. I'm so happy that you're joining me today. Today we will be practicing sun salutes, Surya Namaskar, in anticipation and celebration of the Autumnal Equinox on September 22nd, 2022 at 3:04 p.m. Pacific time. Many yoga teachers teach sun salutes around the season changes, and I do as well. And today I thought I would teach our practice in a chair. You're welcome to do this practice without a chair, start class in some sort of seated position, and not use a chair when we practice the actual sun salutes. I typically freestyle my sun salutes to make them more accessible to myself and the students who practice with me. So if you look sun salutes up, you may find a variety of different practices. You may find some things that are similar and some things that are different. So there are traditional sun salutes, Surya Namaskar A and Surya Namaskar B, and then you'll just find all kinds of different variations of the practice. So if you're using a chair, you should have a pretty steady chair. I have a yoga chair, which is really just a folding chair. If you have something different, like, the chair, a dining room table or something like that, totally fine. It's best to have a chair that's pretty firm. So if it's kind of got a squishy seat, you might want to try to find something that is firmer, that can support you, that allows you to sit tall and long. You could use a coffee table. We don't use the back a whole lot. We will use it a little bit, but you can modify for that. So you're welcome to sit on some sort of short, sturdy table as well. You want to have your legs in a 90-degree angle. So typically sitting a little bit forward on the chair is going to give you that placement of your feet, of your knees, of your legs. And then we just want to sit as tall as we can. So I'm not leaning back against my chair. And sitting at the edge kind of helps to tip our pelvis forwards just ever so slightly to allow us to sit taller. I also want to mention to always honor your body, right? So if something doesn't feel right, you want to do something different, you want to change it, you just don't want to do it, please honor that and do that. Take care of yourself. It's really important that you don't hurt yourself when you practice yoga. This is about self-care, self-love, all of that. And so we want to be really mindful and conscious of that. So let's start in our breath and meditation, whether you're seated, lying down, or seated in a chair. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze. And this just gives us a moment to connect and notice our breath. So my hands are on my thighs. You could place your hands on your belly. Sometimes that's nice to have that because then you feel the movement of your breath. You can have a hand on your belly and a hand on your heart. And let's take a deep inhale and sigh with your exhale. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale. And just come to what is natural with your breath, with the pattern right now in this moment. And the next time you inhale, deepen that breath just a little bit. You don't have to go to any extremes. And exhale. And open your eyes if they're closed, and we'll wiggle our fingers and toes and maybe shake out a little bit. Awesome. All right. So let's hug our right knee into our chest. So there's a variety of ways you could do that. If it's best to stay here, you stay here. You could bring your hands under your thigh. You could bring your hands in front of your shin. You can even just keep your hands at your hips or your chair and lift up your foot. That's a little more work in the core, I find. So find what works best for you. Keep sitting tall. And let's set our foot back down. So back into this seated position where our legs are a 90-degree angle. We're sitting as tall as we can. So normally when I teach yoga, we start typically in constructive rest, which is lying down with your knees bent and your feet on your mat. So I like to consider this constructive rest seated. So here we are, pretty even. And then let's hug our left knee into our chest. And again, find the right spot for you. Sit as tall as you can, so don't let yourself round and hunch. Breathe. I have my foot flexed. Let's set that foot down. Coming back to our seated constructive rest. And then, you might have stuff out in front of you, or excuse me, on the sides of you. So if you have space, we're gonna inhale and exhale our arms up and down. If you don't have that space, you can come forward and up. You also have the option to kind of reach up here, and then maybe hands at your heart to come back down. So you have a few options depending on what your space is like. So if we're gonna reach our hands down, reach your fingertips down, reaching those fingers down toward the floor. And then as you inhale, bringing your arms up. And as you exhale, turn the palms to face the floor as you come back down. So go at your own pace, your own breath. Inhale to reach up. Exhale to reach down. One more time. Awesome, beautiful. All right, we're back in our constructive rest. I like to pause between my poses, get a sensation of feeling. So feel your feet, feel your hands, feel your breath. All right, we're gonna do some cat-cow. So I'm actually gonna shift my chair so that I'm sideways because I think that you can see a little bit better and it will be more understandable. So again, I'm gonna come to the edge of my chair. I've got that nice 90-degree angle, sitting as tall as I can. So I wanna make sure that this isn't happening and this isn't happening, even though we're actually going to cat-cow and that's the movement. But this is our neutral place, right? As best as we can, depending on what's happening in your own body. I have a pretty pronounced lordosis in my low back and kyphosis in my upper back. So I just sit as tall as my spine will allow. So hands can stay on your thighs, hands could be at your hips or even on your chair. And we're gonna do some tucking and tilting. So it's called cat-cow. So the next time you exhale, imagine your tail is gonna come under your body and you're gonna round forward, coming into flexion. And then when you inhale, you're gonna open up, so you're gonna tilt that tail up. Reach your heart up, slight lift, like don't dump your head back, just a slight lift with your chin. And then the next time you exhale, imagine pressing that air out as you come more into that forward fold. And then when you inhale, you open up. Again, going to your own breath. Finish this round and do one more. And then come back to more of that neutral spine. And then we're going to do some shoulder rolls. So, you can just do simple shoulder rolls, rolling forward, up, back, and down. That can feel pretty good. You could put your hands, I'm just turning so you can see me, you could put your hands on your shoulders and let your elbows lead. So depending on how that feels, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not manipulating anything because my chair back is in the way. So find again what's best for you. Sometimes we have to readjust in that chair. Let's do one more. Awesome. And then back to your constructive rest. And then we're going to come into a forward fold. So depending on how your body feels today, your forward fold might just look like this. So we don't want to come with our chin forward and we don't want to round to get there. So how can we come forward and keep our spine long? So we want to think about our hip creases and that we're going to hinge from there to come forward. So maybe you do a little bit at a time. Maybe your hands come to your thighs. Notice what's happening with your chin. We really want to lead. So see if you can just a slight tuck with your chin, keeping the back of your neck long. Maybe you start to come a little more. You go to the spot that's best for you, right? So maybe your torso comes onto your thighs. Your hands can stay anywhere on your legs, or maybe they lightly touch the mat or the floor. And then you can bring your hands back to your thighs or your hips and tip yourself back up into seated constructive rest. Okay, so we're going to come up to standing to do our sun salutes. So if you want to do something else, lie on the mat, hug knees in, make movement with your breath, then you're welcome to do that. So I'm going to put my chair at the top of my mat. because I want to have as much space behind me to be able to step back when it's time to step back. And I just have the two mats so that I can move easily so that you can see me in the different positions that I'm in. So we start in what's called Tadasana mountain pose. So we stand tall. So we check in with our feet, maybe pick your toes up and spread them. You know, if this is difficult, then you can always, be closer to your chair to start the pose, or make sure that you're near a wall. So I want to spread my toes, my roots into the mat, and then I start to feel a lift in my belly. And then maybe you need, a shoulder roll here to open up a little bit. And then imagine there's a string at the top of your head and that string is pulling you on up so that you stand nice and tall. Let's bring our hands together at heart center. And then we'll bring our hands to our hips and let's hinge forward to come into a half fold. So hands anywhere on your chair. If you're doing more of a traditional Uttanasana forward fold, then you're welcome to do that. We're going to stay in this half fold. Sometimes you come more forward, there's not as much room with the chair. And then I'm going to bring my hands on the side of my chair. So your surface might be bigger and you don't need to do that, but I'm going to bring my hands on the side of my chair. And I'm going to step my right foot back. So I'm almost like a little bit of a lunge. So my back heel isn't quite down on the mat. And then I'm going to step it down. So I moved my foot in a little bit. And then I'm going to step my left foot back to come into downward facing dog. You can stay right here in your dog. Or start to come forward. So I'm bringing my torso forward into a plank pose. So don't fall into here. We want to have a nice lift, right? Spine as long as possible. Make sure your chin isn't jutting forward. This is a lot of work. So you can always come back to your dog. If you have it in you and you want to do a little more, we're going to start to bring our hips forward and our heart through and open into a heart opener. Again, not dumping your head back or lifting your chin too high. Press back up into downward facing dog. And then step the right foot forward. So we're in a little bit of a different lunge with our back heel down. And then step your left foot forward. And we'll come into that half fold again. So I brought my hands back onto my chair seat, fully onto the seat with my fingers spread wide. And then I'm going to bring my hands to my hips. And I'm going to inhale to come up to standing. Hands at heart center for a moment. And then we'll come back into that traditional Tadasana mountain pose. So coming back to feeling the feet into your mat, the length of your spine, the reach of the crown of your head, and your heart open and shining forward. And then we'll bring our hands together at heart center. Hands at your hips, hinge forward. So make sure you're not leading with your chin or rounding. Keep yourself as long as possible. You can bend your knees a little bit to come into that half fold, Ardha Uttanasana. So spine as long as can be. And I can have my head up, so I'm going to see if I can adjust my head so that my neck is long on all four sides. And then I'm going to adjust my hands. And this time I'm going to step my left foot back, coming into that lunge. So my back heel doesn't come all the way down. I make sure that my knee is right above my ankle. And I've got the support of my chair here. And it's giving me a nice stretch for me in the back of my leg and the calf muscle. And then I'm going to step my foot just slightly forward so that my whole foot gets on the mat. And then I'm going to step my right foot back to come into downward facing dog. So we shift our hips back and away. If this is intense, you can always bend your knees, and that might give you a little more access. Ears are basically between your upper arms. You can stay here or start to come forward into that plank pose. So keeping your spine as long as possible, you're not dropping your hips. Neck is long. And then maybe you shift into that heart opener. So bringing the hips forward, the heart through, the head and neck up, just ever so slightly, shining your heart forward. And then we're going to press back up, lifting our hips back up to come back into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Let's step the left foot forward. So a little bit different lunge here, still making sure that our knee is above our ankle and our back heel is down on the mat. So almost like a variation of a warrior one. And then we'll step our right foot back. And we'll come into that half fold. So check in with your head and neck. Hands at your hips. Tilt yourself back on up. Hands at heart center. And then we'll bring our arms back down. And just take a moment here to check in with your breath. So if you would like to practice more sun salutes, you're welcome to pause the video and do some on your own. You're welcome to rewind a little bit and do them again with me. I'm just going to do basically one round. So that was really one round of sun salutes. And traditionally, you practice 108. So if you want to practice 108 on your own, let me know about it and enjoy yourself. So we're going to come back to seated in the chair. So once we're seated, coming back to that seated constructive rest, check in with your feet. Just want to make sure that you can see all of me. I have these new earbuds and I have weird little ears and they just do not fit very well in my ears. Not something I ever wanted because they fall out regularly, even the ones that, you know, are attached to each other. So one day I'm gonna lose one and it'll be gone forever. So, just a little distraction. That's just part of the technology, right? But I do have a better microphone now. So coming back to our seated position, you don't have to be as clear on the edge, but find where you're comfortable. Sitting tall. I'm deciding if I'm going to turn my chair or not for this next thing. I think I am. So you can see better sideways. So I think it'll make a little more sense. So this is where I'm going to use the back of the chair. So, you know, if you don't have a back, you can have your hands here or even hands at your hips. So we're going to come into a heart opener. So earlier we were talking about shining forward. So we want to keep this lift here and we're opening up at the back of our heart center and the front of our heart center. So holding onto the chair can be helpful, but you could just have your hands at your hips and then start to bring your elbows back behind you. And again, I'm not dumping my chin back, right? My neck is a continuation of my spine. And then we'll come back to upright. So doing heart openers is really important because a lot of the time we're in this position and we want to be not in that position, right? We want to be tall, we want to be long and open. So they are difficult for us to do because our bodies just aren't used to that. Okay, coming back to face you. All right, seated nice and tall in our chair. We're going to come into a twist. So let's twist to the right first. So let's start with our hands at our hips, and you're going to think about moving from your belly button first. So the belly button moves, and then the mid ribs, and then the heart, and then the shoulders. So we won't go very far. So if you want to keep your hands at your hips, that's totally fine. If you want to take your left hand on the outside of your right knee, you're welcome to do that. Other hand at your hip, or even the other hand at your chair. So we want to keep this length as we open. So let your neck just kind of follow wherever your body goes. You could, once you're kind of in your twist, you could turn your neck and head to look over your back shoulder. It could be in the direction of your heart, or you could even look over your front shoulder. So find what works best for you, for your body right now. One more inhale, nice and tall at gather length, and exhale to come out of your twist. All right, let's go to the second side. So starting with your belly button, hands at your hips, move from your belly button. That's where our twists start. And it's okay if your hips move a little bit, but we don't want to like move to the extreme. So that's why we also don't go farther than we really should. So moving to a good place for you. Belly button, mid ribs, heart, shoulders. And then adjust your hands if you'd like. If that'll allow you to maybe come a little deeper, but also to be tall and long. And then once you feel like you're at your max of your twist, then you can decide if your head turns behind you, if it stays more neutral, or turns to look over the front. shoulder. We don't ever want to twist with our neck first. That's kind of the last to follow. Most of the time, the head and neck are followers and they move last. But in our lives, we tend to lead with our chin, with our head, with our neck, so it's so used to being first and the leader, it's hard for us to change those habits. All right, inhale, gathering that length, and exhale, come out of your twist. All right, so we're gonna come back to how we started class in breath and meditation. So you're welcome to come down onto your mat and lie in constructive rest or stay in your chair with me. So make sure that you're feeling fairly comfortable. We don't want to be like slouched back in the chair, but you can sit pretty tall. Hands can be wherever it's comfortable. And if you're comfortable closing your eyes, you can close your eyes, you can soften your gaze, or keep your eyes open. And let's do a couple of those deeper rounds of breath. So next inhale, a little bit fuller and deeper and longer. And maybe let out a sigh with an exhale. So if we're audible with our exhale, we tend to extend it, which helps to calm us, to calm our nervous system. One more time. And then just come back to that natural breath once again. Feel your feet, feel your hands, feel your breath. Next time you inhale, deepen your breath and fully exhale. Start a little movement in our fingers and our toes. Maybe we stretch, wiggle, maybe a little twist. And if you're lying down, you can make your way over to one side and come up to seated. So let's be in a nice tall seat as much as we can. So if you shifted back in your chair and you find it would be helpful to come a little more forward, you can. And we'll bring our hands together at heart center once again. Keep peace in your mind, keep strength in your body, and keep love in your heart. From my heart to yours, I bow to you. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I appreciate your time with me and to take care of yourself. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email me or send me a message through any of my social media, and all of that information will be down below in the description. If you have any requests or questions or whatnot, feel free to connect with me and let me know. I hope you're well. Happy Autumnal Equinox, and I hope to practice with you again soon. Thanks so much.